Quiet on the set.
Camera speed.
Sound production, take one.
Action! AKAPADers, welcome to another frightening episode of the 31 Days of Dread Extended. Now, let me just explain it real quick. We have the 31 Days of Dread, one horror movie a day in the entire month of October. Well, sometimes that's just not enough. And last year, I got the idea. Let's just, if we have to do 2 horror movies a day, let's just do 2 horror movies a day, because last year was all new movies. Everything was 2025 or 2024, excuse me. And this year, everything is black and white. There's always a struggle when it comes from when I wear my producer hat. There's always a struggle of, we got to bring new things to everyone. But often, too, because of the world we live in, and I think this is one of the benefits of the internet, is a lot of older movies. Movies that might just be collecting dust and have no conversation, or the final say might be in a magazine article somewhere that only a few people know about. The movie itself is artifact. Well, older movies rise to the top and get, they get conversations. They get YouTube videos and Facebook threads, and they go viral on X or TikTok. Well, that's not the case of today's movie. From Dusk Till Dawn, 1996. Written by Quentin Tarantino, directed by Robert Rodriguez. At the time, Quentin and Robert, they were really the toast of the town. They were young, hot. They were the type of filmmaker every single film student wanted to grow up to be like. These guys seemingly came out of nowhere. Both did significant independent movies. Now, the lore of Quentin Tarantino around this time was he worked in a VHS shop and started writing movies, writing scripts. And there were like 3 scripts that were like buzzing around that we knew that like 4, right? Reservoir Dogs, which he directed himself, From Dusk Till Dawn, Natural Born Killers, and True Romance. So the idea of a video store clerk writing these like masterpieces that Tony Scott would direct, that Oliver Stone would direct, that he would collaborate with a similar rising talent, Robert Rodriguez. And Robert Rodriguez came from, his lore was that he sold himself to they made a series about this, which is amazing. Robert Rodriguez getting money to film El Mariachi is a show of itself, and I guess maybe I'm delving into some of the content for additional episodes around this, because I do feel like this episode starts us a little bit on the path of these 2 filmmakers. And both of them still going to this day. But Robert Rodriguez sold himself to psychological testing. He became a guinea pig to get money for El Mariachi. Writes a book called A Rebel Without a Crew, that's where I learned about the movie Barfly. Barfly was one of his favorite movies. He talks about it in that book, and now Barfly is one of my favorite movies. But Robert Rodriguez was the true independent filmmaker. He later remakes El Mariachi with Desperado. Now, some people call that a sequel. Technically, it is. I always viewed it as a sequel. I always viewed Terminator 2 Judgment Day as it's a remake of Terminator. And then Once Upon a Time in Mexico, I believe, right, with Johnny Depp. That completes his trilogy. But Robert Rodriguez is somewhat of a Renaissance man. I mean, he's a cinematographer. He writes. He directs. He I believe even during Spy Kids, like he does his own special effects or sets them up and was highly involved with the special effects. See, and when I speak of Robert Rodriguez and I say special effects for something like Sin City, I'm meaning that he's there. Like he's not pressing, he's not rendering every single frame. He's setting things up to the point that he knows what the end result's going to be. Like he understands enough to predict the end result with success. But Robert Rodriguez, I mean, I guess like most notably of recent, I guess we're going back a couple years already. But the books of Boba Fett, the book of Boba Fett, he directed a couple episodes of that, and he's in the Star Wars camp now, which I think is a great fit for him. It's upsetting that he did direct some of the episodes of Book of Boba Fett that instantly became memeable on the internet. Look, the internet's good sometimes, the internet's bad. So we have this movie here. I never spoke about it. Isn't it crazy? And I'm watching it. And I was thinking heavily about this movie during Sinners. Sinners comes out. Michael B. Jordan, Ryan Coogler, Josh Allen's wife, Katie Steinfeld. Well, she turns into a vampire in that movie, as a spoiler. And that turn is very similar to Selma Hayek turning into a vampire in this movie, where both of these movies they run parallel to the point that they seem to be about one thing, and then they turn into something else. So Sinners endlessly got compared from Dusk Till Dawn, like endlessly. Here's my and maybe this is the jaded film going audience. Here's my one position against that argument. When we're watching From Dusk Till Dawn, Quentin Tarantino and George Clooney, they are the Gecko brothers. They're criminals. They're somewhat on the run. They're trying to make their way to Mexico. They have a deal set up. And Quentin Tarantino's character is so twisted that like it just becomes like a true crime movie. His character is so messed up in the head, and the things that he does, you get this level of dread whenever this guy is, like, just for example, alone with a girl or with a girl. Period. You get this dread, and it's not on a action movie level. Like this is pure character-driven filmmaking here. And George Clooney is the older brother, more level-headed, but also dedicated to his brother. Very similar to what we saw in Black Rabbit, where the one brother pulls the other brother down, but the other brother kind of likes it. He's not totally against it, getting into these situations. He's bad too. And then they encounter a family in a camper. So when that happens in this movie, when these two guys are with a family, a father, his son, and daughter, you're just like, this is madness. This is wow. And it kind of happens somewhat, like all within like the first 30 minutes or so of the movie. And I'm watching this, and it's been a while since I really watched From Dusk Till Dawn, and I'm watching this, and I'm just thinking about Sinners, because I never liked that comparison, never liked it. In Sinners, you're waiting for the hook in that movie. Like, like Michael B. Jordan's character, he plays a twin or a double. They're trying to get their nut off. They're trying to throw this like party, and they're bootleggers, and he knows how to get it done. You see him hiring the musicians, organizing the alcohol, moving through town, going through good debt, bad debt, So you see a little bit of his reputation or the brother's reputation, but you're kind of waiting for a hook, and they do lean. They do they tease the vampires earlier too. In Dusk Till Dawn, they get to this like truck stop or outpost, if you will, or Alamo, and we get this like strip dance. And Selma Hayek, during that strip dance, transforms into a vampire. And then it turns into a vampire action movie. It's not true crime horror. The actual split in this movie is one of the most unique things you can ever experience with a American horror movie. And I say it in that way because I feel like this experiment from Dusk Till Dawn, and Tarantino has been involved with so many experiments previously too. He had collaborated with Rodriguez for Four Rooms, an anthology experiment. I believe that was by Miramax and spearheaded by Harvey Weinstein. I think Tarantino's entire arc is one big experiment. It's fascinating. So this movie splits and it becomes this all-out like horror fest. It's horror action at its finest. I think up until Blade, like we get this movie and then we get Blade, and we see a little bit of that structure. And Blade comes out 2 years later. You have to say that, who was it? Norringham? Who the hell directed Blades? Stephen Norringham. You have to say Stephen Norringham saw this sequence where the whole room just breaks out into like vampire horror, and you get these like ideas where the legs of a table can be flipped upside down, and you can just throw vampires on top of it. You get these like interesting ways to kill vampires. Also highly influential, something we had not seen a lot of. And then the eventual turn, right? Tarantino, the brother, the corrupted brother, the evil brother, becomes a vampire of himself. And then like we essentially have this dilemma, which we see from the beginning of the movie. AKAPAD, from Dusk Till Dawn, I feel like this movie is a little bit memory hold. Back in the day, I was there when this movie dropped because my friend Rob and I were Pulp Fiction fans. We both hunted down Reservoir Dogs and would watch Reservoir Dogs. And, we're in high school, would watch it after high school. Between like his parents like coming home from work and when we had his house and we would have my house at times to ourselves, we would get into trouble. But we watched these movies. We hunted down and paid the money for and you can say like him and I, like we were just like film kids. But even though we're in high school, I don't, it's hard to imagine kids in high school being kids. They're almost like just adults at that point. I talk about this a lot. The double VHS Natural Born Killers, the extended one that had Tommy Lee Jones's head getting decapitated in the prison riot. AKAPAD, this is a highly influential movie for me. Because when we saw this in the theater, we freaked out. We loved it. This instantly became one of our movies. We instantly bought it when it was available on VHS. I'm sad to say, by the time the DVDs rolled around, Rob and I were estranged a little. Like we weren't as close as we should have been. I feel like even now, even though we somewhat, since my father's passing, when he passed, felt like Rob and I had a little bit of a, reunion, which is weird because I thought maybe we would make up for lost times, but Not always the case, right? But AKAPAD from Dusk Till Dawn is irrefutably one of the greatest film experiments I've ever seen. I think it's one of the best. Now, I know the category of film experiments, we can kind of debate that, but this movie really is special, and I think its memory hold, like even just there's this one scene I always love, the scene where in the beginning of the movie this clerk gets set on fire and he crashes through this like food shelf because they're in a convenience store, and like the popcorn starts popping. It's just like cool stuff like that where there's like this sick sense of humor throughout this movie with the absolute horror. And the movie does shift, and it shifts and establishes itself twice, in my view, way more effectively than Sinners. But that doesn't take away from Sinners. The comparison of the two, and I said this during my Sinners conversation, that the comparison from Dusk Till Dawn took away from Sinners, and I don't think that should have been done. All right, AKAPADers, 31 Days of Dread Extended. Let's go.
Roll sound.
Rolling. Sound production, take 2.
Let's take this time real quick, AKAPADers, my fellow film buffers, and let's just go over the schedule. This is years in the making. This type of rollout I've been planning for years, but we're finally here. So here we go. Early in the morning, that's the new stuff. 8 a.m. Now, 8 p.m., Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, these are movies maybe of something coming out. Like if there's a Marvel movie coming out and we want to do a retrospective on that particular franchise, or, if Sylvester Stallone comes back and gives us Rocky Part 18, we might want to use the later time slots for a week or two to go over all of the Rocky movies. Now, we have a lot of different threads on this podcast that's explored 8 p.m. So 8 a.m., 8 p.m. Wednesdays at 8 p.m., this is our creator spotlight. We could do an episode on Martin Scorsese, Steven Spielberg, some of the new guys, Spike Lee, even composers, guys like John Williams. This brings us into the weekend. Saturday, Sunday morning. Again, we're back at that 8 a.m. drop. We do cartoons because I want to emulate the times where you would wake up with a bowl of cereal and watch cartoons all day Saturday and all day Sunday, and then eventually you would get to touch grass because you would have one of your friends knocking on your door to play in a touch football game or even some baseball, basketball. The weekend nights, let's get into education. 8 p.m. Again, all of our drops are either 8 a.m. or 8 p.m. But the weekend nights, documentaries, and I focus on creative documentaries because I feel like a part of this film buff movement that we're all bathing in, that I'm super grateful for, is education. And some of where we're finding our facts, some of the, general enjoyment, because I love documentaries. All of this is explored at 8 o'clock p.m. And trust me, there's a lot there. There's a lot out there that I didn't even know existed. And we're going to go beyond that too. We're going to get into some of the graphic art, some of the special effects, some of the makeup documentaries. There's a lot to learn, and I'm so happy to bring you the 9 p.m. because, guys, you guys know I'm an autodidact. I am self-educated. Sure, I have some certifications. Sure, I spent time at the Art Institute of Philadelphia for animation. But in large, I'm a self-educated, self-made person that's connected to the weekend 8 p.m. drops. My AKAPADers, my film buffers, I hope to see you there for all of it. I love you guys, and rock and roll.
Okay, that's a wrap.